Hello, and welcome to this CI and CD for Xamarin Developers course. I am Eduardo Rosas and I am going to be your instructor throughout the entire course. And in this particular lecture, I want to talk to you about the structure of this course. Mainly so you get a sense about what is it that you're going to learn, but also so you get the entire scope of what is it that you should expect from this course, and maybe even decide that you already know how to do something that I'm going to describe about a particular section, so you can maybe skip that section entirely. And hopefully this is going to be clearer at the end of this lecture. So if you are here, I think you are already interested in DevOps. And this means that you already get a sense about what is it that you have to do, or at least you know that there is something that you have to improve when it comes to all of the things that you do, from coding a new feature in your mobile projects to deploying them to your users. You may already know that you have to somehow automate how is it that you build these new versions, these new features that you eventually have to deploy. You may already get a sense about the need to test all of these new features, so you know that they always work, that your application is not suddenly going to be crashing. And of course that eventually you should be able to automate how you deploy these new features to your users as fast as possible. So if you're interested in this course, maybe you already get a sense about what is it that you have to do, or again, at least know that there is something in there that you maybe can improve. And don't worry, in the next couple of lectures, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what DevOps is and why you should use it. But for now, just think about these 3 steps that you eventually need to perform. Automate the builds of new features that you may have just coded, automate the tests so you know that your new features don't break things, and eventually automate how you deploy these new features to your users. And with these 3 things in mind, it is that this course is built. We're going to be starting with the basics, starting right from GitHub. How you can best structure your branches so that it is easier for you to work with CI and CD. We're going to spend an entire section talking about GitHub and, of course, source control, and how is it that you're eventually going to be working with it. Like I said, we're going to be focusing a lot on how you should structure branches, so you have a GitHub repository that is ready for you to implement continuous integration, continuous deployment. And why is it important to start right here? Maybe a lot of you already know what version control is, what GitHub is, but I think it is important because this is the basics of what eventually is going to become CI/CD. If your GitHub repository is not working correctly, or your branches are not structured in a certain way, it is going to be a little bit harder to implement good CI/CD. In fact, at the very core of this entire CI/CD structure is going to still be GitHub when it comes to pull requests. So these right here, the pull requests in GitHub, are going to be at the core of the basics of your entire CI/CD flow. So if you don't understand pull requests, well, it's going to be almost impossible to implement good CI/CD. Again, if you already feel really comfortable with GitHub and you know exactly what pull requests are, maybe you can skip the GitHub section. But do make sure that you catch this section if you want to understand exactly how is it that pull requests will eventually lead to CI and CD. Right after the GitHub section, we're going to dive right into App Center. App Center is a newish service from Microsoft that is entirely mobile-centered. All of your mobile applications can connect to App Center. In this course, of course, we're going to be focusing on the Xamarin side of App Center. But if you're building Android, iOS applications, natively, or maybe even with React Native, you're also going to be able to connect to App Center. And in fact, I am going to be doing a course precisely oriented to those different platforms connecting to App Center. Now, App Center is not only built for CI/CD, like to automate tests, automate builds, automate deployments, which of course it is, that is why we're going to be using it. But App Center is so focused on mobile that it also implements things like diagnostics and analysis of the data of how your users are behaving inside of your application. So we're actually going to be taking a look at these two things to build an application from the ground up. In the Intro to App Center section, we're going to be building this application, connecting it to these two services that App Center provides. How can we diagnose any errors, any bugs that our application may have, and how we can analyze how our users are behaving within our application. Are they really using the features that we implemented inside of the application? And another reason to building this application from the ground up is because starting in the continuous integration section, it is going to be very important that you understand exactly what is going on inside of this application. And of course, it's going to help us get ready with App Center before implementing CI and CD with the 3 steps that I mentioned that are right here at the left of this slide. It is also going to make it really easy for you to understand the entire source code because you would have built it yourself. And so in the continuous integration section, you know exactly what is happening within your project. Of course, if all you want is for me to provide you with the source code and start working with CI immediately, well, if you feel comfortable enough with GitHub already, you can jump right into the continuous integration section. There, I am going to provide the source code that we work with in the Intro to App Center section. But I won't get ahead of myself. I am going to mention that again when the time comes. For now, let me mention one last thing that you can do with App Center. Because again, it is so focused on mobile applications that it even recently added some features that are currently in preview, but that should soon be ready for you to use in your production applications. And those are databases, authentication, and push notifications. So really, by using App Center, you have everything that you need to build your mobile applications. You may not even need anything outside of App Center. Eventually, when these 3 new features are outside of preview, you will be able to have all of your data, authenticate your users, send notifications directly through App Center. Of course, as I mentioned, also diagnose any errors, analyze how your users behave, and implement continuous integration, continuous testing, and continuous delivery, all within App Center. And of course, these 3 last things are the main content for this course. Continuous integration, which is of course talking about how from your source code, from a repository on GitHub, you can automatically build your projects. This is of course all going to be happening through App Center, as I briefly described in the previous slide. Then continuous quality. How is it that after having built your project, you're going to be testing many different things inside of your application and making sure that everything still works correctly. And after that, uploading those tests to App Center so everything is working automatically. And finally, continuous delivery, in which after being certain that everything is working correctly, that the quality of the application is preserved, well, you deploy to some distribution groups that you may have built previously. So you can automatically deploy new versions of your application. This is what you're going to be learning throughout this course. Again, hopefully by now you have a better idea about what you will learn in each section that confirms this course. Maybe you already decided that the GitHub section is something that you already master, so you can just skip it, jump right into the Intro to App Center section. Or maybe you have even decided to jump directly into the Continuous Integration section, skip the section where we build an application from the ground up, and just start with the code that I am going to be providing you in the resources for this lecture. For now though, I am glad that you have decided to join this course. This is a very important step towards becoming a better developer who integrates CI and CD into their developments so they can focus on what really matters, which is building a better application and leave everything else to be automated. We are going to talk a little bit more about what this means in the next couple of lectures, starting in the next one, in which we're going to be talking about what is DevOps for those of you who may not understand what it is entirely.